Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Mikhail Peters. Yeah, I had no idea what I was going to record about today, and I know I promised that I was going to talk more about having a job in Finland part 2, but I think I'm actually going to talk about something different today. Yeah, so I just came back from a trip, so I'm kind of like sunburned looking and all that. I don't know. But I decided that maybe what I would talk about would be explaining the difference between not really work culture, but what people think about work in Finland versus the US. So, work perception, maybe, will be the title of this. Because I had a friend ask me about essentially like getting annoyed that America's so like you meet somebody and it's like, well, what do you do, right? Like, what do you do? Like, there's a whole, internet meme about this somewhere. I don't know if meme is really the thing or if it's just an article I read or where it came from. But, a French guy's talking to an American guy and it's like, what do you do? It's like, I don't know, I work in construction. I just made something up. And, vice versa. And the guy's like, well, I snowboard, I play guitar, and you talk about the things that you do that are not just work related. So, yes, the thing that, I have talked about this in past videos is really I experienced a great deal of culture shock coming back from Finland to the US. And to be very honest with you, it was very funny because when I last returned to the US, because I currently do not have a return flight to Finland, I was like, I'm feeling real like COVID, like 2020 up in here because I don't know when I'm like landing in Newark and I have no idea when I'm leaving again. And that was really hard for me. Just so you know, I like immediately bought a flight out of the US as soon as I got vaccinated, and I could. And I had to wait a year, and it was a year too long. So we'll see how long this lasts. But, they give me my passport back and they're like, welcome home. And I'm like, it's not home. Like, this is not home for me. And then when I go to Finland, there's like always this sign that says welcome home. And I'm like, yes, I agree. So like really for me, like in my heart, Finland is home. And it's like, what the heck, you don't even speak Finnish. I know that, thank you. I'll learn it eventually the same way I learned Russian, and it's going to take me 10 years, but luckily I don't plan on dying in 10 years, so I'm sure I'll get there. But, why do I say, like, Finland is home? I've kind of told myself for years that for some weird reason I, like, buried my heart in Lappeenranta, and that's why I chose to look for property there. And this was like a plan long before I, graduated with my master's. It was just kind of always how I felt. It's nice when you know how you feel about something, because sometimes you don't. And like, why? Okay, like let's get to why. For me, running is like my favorite hobby, and I talk about this a lot also. It's like the Ransoder IT Trail is literally like the best place I have ever found in the world to run. So first off, that experience is like the experience I would like to have every day for the rest of my life. Now, there's not a lot of industry in Lappeenranta, which is like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's really cool because people are not super work-centric or stressed out or running around like headless chickens like I'm used to seeing in the US. Now, on the other hand, the problem becomes that because there's a lack of industry, I've noticed that people tend to get very like depressed and like freaking out. Recently, one friend said to me, and this changed my perspective a lot, was Lappeenranta is a good place to work because there's not a lot else to do there. And I agree with that. Like, as somebody who does remote work, right, like I do YouTube. I'm actually trying to start a startup now in Lappeenranta. We're going to see if that's going to work. I don't know yet. I will be so happy if it does because, like, wow, this was something else I wanted to do for years, but, like, it was just not working. So we'll see. But, I think that's one cool thing. So a lot of people kind of like feel a certain way. This is like a political thing almost, in my opinion. It's very polarized, like the whole startup thing and the entrepreneurship thing. I think it's kind of cool that like people care about it in Finland. In the US, like I don't really see that or hear about that. And people are like, wow, but I would imagine that there's so much more funding and the startup culture in the US is so much more developed. Well, if it is, I don't really know about it. I only have one friend who is an entrepreneur, and honestly, I'm not even really sure what she does half the time. I did talk to her about my YouTube channel, and she's like, you don't like understand how big of a deal it is. And I'm like, no, I really don't. Like, I don't. And like, she's like, oh, you need to get paid partnerships and stuff. I have people emailing me being like, I will help you with your SEO. That's really cool. And I would like to get to that point. But again, I'm going to keep saying it, PM problem, post-move problem. Now, my startup in Finland is more time sensitive because it's more for like internationally arriving students. So I'm trying to like start thinking about that too. Whatever. Okay. So, and also because I'm on break from my PhD for a year. Yes. that's like a relief. Anyway, okay, getting tangential as usual. But all right, so people are not like constantly talking about work. People are not constantly talking about money. Why? Because nobody really has either of those two things in Lappeenranta, right? Like getting a job is really hard. I have watched countless friends move to Helsinki because they needed money. That's fine. That's why I'm not in Finland half the time, because I can't afford to be there half the time. If I could, I would, believe me. So, the hardest thing for me about reintegrating into the US after I'd been in Finland for 2 years, and it was really hard because the last time I went back to the US was like, I came back in January 2023 and I didn't go back until September 2023. I think being abroad for like 9 months straight, not in the US, was the longest time I'd spent outside the US and in a country that I loved being in. Okay. I mean, I did travel around a bit. Like in the summer, I went to a lot of places. I went to like Australia, Croatia. Where else did I go? Malta. I was there for like, and those were like long trips. I was like cumulatively out of the country in the summer for like 5 weeks that year. Glad I did all that before I started working full time. That was kind of low key the objective. But what I'm trying to get at is, coming back to the US, like what was hard? It was hard that everything became about money. It was even hard with my graduation when my mom and my aunt and my mom's boyfriend came to visit. Like this was Finland, and they're like, start talking to me about money. And I'm like, why are we talking about money? Like, I don't even have a job yet. I haven't even seen my first paycheck yet. Okay. Like whatever money I have is in my bank account. I also had this really dumb plan of like blowing all the money in my bank account on travel before I came back. I was like, and then I'm going to worry about money. Retrospectively, I wish I could go yell at myself and say, no, bad idea. But the past is in the past, and all we can do is move on at this point. So, they're like the thing that really pissed me off. And like, I'm just trying to explain like, the chronology of me. It's like a Stockholm syndrome thing, actually. Like, I actually was Googling this yesterday. Like, what is what the heck was it? Not a toxic relationship. Yes, it was trauma bonding. So trauma bonding, and it's like similar to Stockholm syndrome, essentially, when like the abused person starts to really like their abuser and doesn't like defend them and makes excuses for their behavior and like wants to still be there even though it's not really good for them. This is kind of how I feel about America. That's a bold statement. Wow. That was just like a realization I had just now. All right, now I got to back myself up out of that one. We're not backing it up. We're just explaining what's going on, right? I just explained it's very difficult to get out of an abusive situation. And if I feel like I'm being abused by a society where everything is work-centric and it's really hard to be balanced, and it's really hard to be balanced about money and health and well-being and relationships, but I'm acting like it's all okay because I at least get the money part out of it. I don't know how good that is for the human psyche. And, it's hard because, yes, I had one friend say to me a long time ago, one of my Russian friends, you do not control what country you were born into, but you do control what country you live in. Now, the hard thing for me is that all my family lives in the US, and although my family drives me insane half the time, I do still love them, right? So I have this kind of thing going on too. Now, I have friends in Finland who kind of feel like family, like who I really like and stuff, but, still kind of different. They're not the ones who, raised me and who I've spent most of my life with. So there is that. Okay, yes, so back to the graduation. That's what I was trying to get at. Like, I was not really in a good mood when I was graduating because I was really upset this experience was over. And don't worry, in 6 short months, I already came back, renewed my residence permit, found a piece of property, and re-enrolled in a PhD program. So we still have my Finnish ties that I'm not letting go of. And as I often say right now, if you really held a gun to my head and made me choose, I'd probably just figure out a way to make Finland work. But right now, that's not the situation I'm in, and if it ever ends up being the situation I'm in, if I can run the numbers and make it work that way, it's probably what's going to happen. But anyway, so I have pretty strong feelings about this I was not even aware of until I started making this video. But my mom's boyfriend started talking to me one morning when we're in Helsinki, like having breakfast at some random place, random hotel, and he's like, start talking about like how much money I'm going to be making when I graduate. And he's like, yeah, you should be making like $200,000 or $300,000 a year. And I'm like, who makes that money besides like a doctor or a lawyer? And this conversation really made me angry because I'm like, I'm graduating. I just want to get a job. I just want to start earning money. I don't even really care how much money it is. I just want to do a job I like. And I'm just explaining, like, this is how it started out, and then this is not where it ended up, okay? So there was all that. Then I come back, and it's immediately like, I want you to move out. Thank you, parents. So that's been another thing. And now I'm like, crap, now I really need money, because then I started tracking the US housing market. I'm like, how the heck does anybody make this work? Like, I cannot figure out how to make this work with my current salary. So I did the stupid travel escapism thing and just traveled for the next year and planned everything in advance and was like, I'm going to simultaneously, save up some money during this so that I can figure out a way to make all this work, which I'm in the process of doing. Good for me. But anyway, like, it's just the preoccupation of, you go hang out with Americans, things are about business, things are about money. And some Finnish people will argue, well, yeah, we need some of that energy here in Finland. Okay, cool. Maybe you do. Like, okay, you're really into the startup stuff. You want to grow the economy. That's cool. Yeah, maybe you want to be the change or you want other people to be the change. Doesn't matter. Either way, we're agreeing that some change could be good. I don't really know. I think so. I think that the issue around international students not working enough, but wanting to work enough, you have to understand that, like, a lot of the international students who are coming to Finland are already people who are a little bit, like, higher achieving. So their brains are like, they want things to do. Whereas, like, Finnish people kind of already, like, are in the system and are like, yeah, we're all chilling over here and we're happy and we're acclimated. And the international people are like, I'm bored. I need a job. I need to talk to people. And then the Finnish people are like, okay. And then they don't do anything. And then it's like a clash. Okay. So where am I going in terms of, what this looks like in terms of, hold on, brain fart. So first I'm talking about money and jobs and all that. Now I'm going to talk about being a good person, improving your worth in society. And this is where it gets really hard. And I'm going to tell a story I've told a lot of times. I used to live in Kyrgyzstan in 2017. I was there for the summer. It was the first time I was studying Russian abroad. And my host aunt asked me if I was ready to go back to the US. The answer, as it was then, and as it always is now and will continue to be for the rest of my life, was no. And when I got asked why, the answer I gave in response was because in the US, it is hard to be a good person. So what do I mean by that? We, as Americans, live in a society where we are praised for being selfish, for stepping on other people to get ahead, for competing, for outdoing the person next to us, just to make ourselves look better. And I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's kind of a terrible way to live. But I also understand that that is what I need to do in this society to, garnish respect from others. So yes, it's very good if I'm the person who has the potential to make $200 or $300 a year, that I should be living up to my duty to do that. And as much as I would like to pretend that, like, in my heart, I feel that way, like, I don't. I really don't. I believe that money is a protection. That's what it says in the Bible. Like, I do take advice from the Bible. You can have whatever opinion about that. I don't really care. I know a lot of Finnish people are pretty agnostic, or feel very personally about religion. That's cool. That's stuff I probably talk more about on the Russian side because people really ask about it. But anyway, I think money is a protection. I think it's there as a tool, something you need to use. I don't think it's the end-all be-all of what existence is supposed to be based around. Now, I think it serves a purpose. It meets needs. But beyond that, like, I don't really want to think about it or worry about it. Like, that's my own thing. And that was also the hard part about leaving Finland, was I liked being around people who weren't talking about it and thinking about it, because as much as we want to act like our whatever is around us doesn't influence us, it does. And in Finland, that was just a separate issue. For me, that was like drinking. Like, there's just a lot of drinking in Finland, and you have to be a little bit strategic about how to avoid that. Different people have different opinions about that. Good for you. It's something that I was around a lot. And looking back, I kind of wish I could have taken some of those hours and spent them on my startup that I'm now trying to do. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Again, it's in the past. I can't change it. Just learn, move on. So, yes, I think that, I talk a lot about the housing stuff. That's been a lot of what this channel has been covering, is the growth of my housing challenge process, which we're almost there at the tail end, man. I feel like I'm running a marathon and I'm like literally in the last 500 meters. And it's like, you're like, do I slow down or speed up right now? Because it's so close and whatever happens doesn't really make a difference. So, yes. Like for me, once I get past the housing thing, I think that's kind of it. To quote some other, scripture stuff, it does talk about how if your eye is simple, your body will be bright. Like, what the heck does that mean? So it's like the less you can desire from your eyes, like, it specifically talks about the showy display of one's means of life. I don't really need a yacht. I kind of want a boat. I've actually always wanted a boat. That's like a really long term. If I end up in a lot better of a financial position, I really want to get a boat. That's kind of it, aside from just having a place to live. And still being able to travel somewhat at some point. I think I would like to reduce that to twice a year, and I would be happy. Not like 10 times a year like it was this past year. That was too much. Too much, man. So yeah, too much of a good thing. And maybe that's what the US is all about. It's too much of a good thing, and that good thing is capitalism. Everybody's motivated by capitalism because everybody is inherently selfish and greedy because humans are concerned with their own survival. Now you may be like, but altruism makes people feel better. It does, but fighting against the basic human urge to just be selfish is very, very, very hard. And if you don't believe me, I don't think you're being very honest. Maybe you should go have a conversation about that with ChatGPT or something that's going to call you out on that logic, because I think it's pretty faulty. It's sort of like knowing that eating the candy bar versus going for the run. We all know which one of those is better. But if we want to make an argument for why the candy bar is better, you're not going to get much further than hedonistically for this 1 minute I'm eating the candy bar, I'm happy. Okay? And it's the same thing with anything else that is hard in life, including being altruistic and giving a crap about other people. So I think that's the hard thing, is that it's a lot harder to connect in a deep, authentic, genuine way / on that level when you are somewhere where people are obsessed with money and achievement. Now, again, what are the good things? It drives industry, it drives innovation, technology, productivity, and those are all cool. But whether I think that those are more important than connection and the primary human experience, I do not believe that they are. So that's where I'm going to leave this discussion for today, is that I really think that I like the way Finland's doing things a lot better than the US. However, I understand why there are arguments for and against each one. I do understand that in Finland, the lack of industry can sometimes make people go a little bit crazy, especially international students. They get bored. They don't know what to do with themselves. It can drive depression. On the other hand, I think being too obsessed with achieving can also make you kind of unempathetic, unrelatable, kind of a jerk to other people, and not caring enough about how you contribute positively to society other than just, making yourself rich or you being better than other people. So you're never going to completely escape one or the other of these types of things. We live in a global society. We have the internet. People watch me from different countries, and I'm American. You're being infiltrated by America. Yeah. I was having a discussion with somebody about spies this weekend, and I'm like, I can't even tell you the number of times people think I'm a spy. And I'm like, that sounds like a terrible job. I'm not doing it. Sorry. I just talked about that in the Russian video. I was like, I don't want to work for the intelligence community. Well, that's exactly what a spy would say. Okay, that's fine. You can think that. I don't really care. But yeah, so maybe what I believe is that each country could live, yeah, and learn more about the other thing from the other person, which is why I think programs like the Fulbright that I did are so important. It really is unfortunate that they're starting to cut funding for it. I don't even know how to feel about that. Well, I mean, yes, I do. It's not good. It's sad. It makes me sad. Yeah. I mean, there are other ways to, promote this intercultural understanding, but one of the things I've liked about the US historically has been the opportunities we've had as, me, an American student, to do these programs in other countries. I had a Fulbright scholarship and I had a Boren scholarship, and I just wish that these, things could stay where they're at, but we'll see what happens. So that's everything. I don't know. Hopefully this was interesting. Very ranty as usual. Time for me to go back to work kind of thing right now at this moment. And I appreciate all the support I get from the Finnish audience because, like, I love Finland, honestly. And not even in a nationalistic way. It's like my spirit location because it's so nice and cold, and right now it's so hot here, and I already don't want to be here. And I just enjoy talking to people there. It's so chill. I just like it. That's it. Sometimes you just like things like chocolate, or you don't. It's whatever. All right, I'm gonna go work now. Until next time, bye.